Ever feel like you're stuck in an echo chamber of ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, we're diving into a world where beliefs spread.
Oh, wow.
Like viruses, the realm of new religions, or as our source material calls them,
Oh, interesting.
contagious cults.
Okay.
And we've got 5 fascinating examples, all thanks to this book I've been digging into,
Okay.
Contagious Cults by Dr. Andrea Diem.
It's a really compelling look
Yeah.
at how these groups have thrived, not just because of their ideologies,
Right.
but because they've mastered the art of using memes.
Okay, before we go any further, I have to ask, when you say memes, you're not talking about those silly cat pictures on the internet, right?
Well, those are memes.
Okay.
But the concept goes much deeper.
Right.
It's about any unit of cultural information that can replicate and spread just like genes.
Interesting.
Think catchy tunes, fashion trends, even that recipe for banana bread that everyone was making during lockdown.
Yeah.
The easier it spreads, the more successful it is, regardless of whether it's true or not.
So applying that to religion, you're saying that a belief, even a questionable one, can essentially go viral.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Contagious Cults analyzes 5 very different new religions through this lens of memetics.
Okay.
You can see how they use some surprisingly clever tactics to gain a following. Tactics that, honestly, any of us could be susceptible to.
Okay, so strap yourselves in, everyone, because this deep dive is about to get contagious.
Yes.
Where should we start?
Let's begin with a group that absolutely nailed the piggyback meme,
Okay.
the Self-Realization Fellowship,
Okay.
or SRF.
Founded by Paramahansa Yogananda, who brought Kriya Yoga to the U.S. in the 1920s.
Yes.
I actually remember seeing their distinctive orange temples popping up around when I was a kid.
What Yogananda understood, which many spiritual teachers coming from the East didn't,
Right.
was the importance of cultural context.
Yeah.
Instead of presenting his teachings as something completely foreign, he blended them with familiar elements of Christianity.
So he was basically making his teachings more palatable for a largely Christian America.
Exactly.
Smart move.
He emphasized Jesus alongside Hindu figures, even going so far as to arrange photographs of Jesus,
Wow.
Babaji and other gurus together on the altar. This visual meme made the transition less jarring for newcomers.
But wasn't that risky? I mean, couldn't it have alienated devout Christians who saw it as blasphemous?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, yes, that risk existed.
Right.
But by weaving together elements of both faiths, Yogananda also tapped into a growing fascination with Eastern spirituality,
Yeah.
while still offering the comfort of the familiar.
Right.
He even referred to his centers as churches to further normalize the experience. And the result,
Yeah.
SRF gained a substantial foothold in American culture.
That piggyback strategy clearly played a role in their success. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Yogananda, right? I read somewhere that there was some controversy around his teachings.
Oh, absolutely. He was even accused of running a love cult at one point,
Oh, wow.
leading to some rather scandalous headlines.
Yeah.
Apparently, husbands weren't thrilled about his influence on their wives.
That's incredible. So even with this carefully crafted image and savvy tactics, there was still pushback.
It's a reminder that no meme, no matter how cleverly designed, is universally accepted. There will always be resistance.
Yeah.
But the fact that SRF survived and continued to grow is a testament to Yogananda's effectiveness as a meme propagator.
Yeah.
And there's one more detail that I think really illustrates his mastery of this concept.
You're talking about his body being incorruptible after death, right?
Yes.
I've always found that aspect of SRF fascinating and a little bit creepy, if I'm being honest.
Now think about it from a memetic perspective.
Yeah.
SRF emphasized this aspect of Yogananda's passing, a narrative that aligns perfectly with the Catholic tradition of venerating incorruptible saints.
Oh, I see. So it's like another form of piggybacking.
Yes.
By connecting to that existing belief system. He was further legitimizing himself.
Exactly.
At least in the eyes of his followers.
Yogananda and SRF really provide a textbook example of how to spread ideas effectively. It's about understanding your audience, identifying points of connection, and then crafting your message in a way that resonates.
It makes you wonder, what other memes are we unconsciously subscribing to every day? Okay, so we've seen how one group used this piggybacking approach. What other memetic strategies did these contagious cults employ?
While SRF was all about blending, and our next group took a more covert approach.
Okay.
Imagine this. You're looking for ways to improve yourself. Maybe take a self-help seminar.
Yeah.
And you stumble upon something that seems pretty harmless. But under the surface, it's actually a gateway to a whole belief system you never signed up for.
Okay, now that sounds a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Are we talking about subliminal messages and brainwashing?
Not quite that dramatic.
Okay.
But it does illustrate the concept of the Trojan horse meme.
Okay.
And the group that really mastered this tactic is the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness.
Okay.
Or MSIA.
All right, MSIA. I'll admit, that one's new to me.
Okay.
Tell me more.
It was founded by John Roger Hinkins, who actually started out as a devotee of another new religion called Ekankar.
Interesting.
He clearly learned a thing or two about building a movement because he essentially created this whole ecosystem around MSIA.
Okay.
With seemingly secular programs like insight seminars and the University of Santa Monica acting as gateways.
So you're drawn in by the promise of personal growth or higher education.
Right.
But you end up getting a dose of John Rogers' teachings along the way.
Exactly.
It's actually a pretty brilliant strategy when you think about it.
It is.
Right? And it clearly worked because you mentioned that MSIA grew pretty rapidly.
It did. They were particularly successful at attracting people who might have been skeptical of traditional religion.
Right.
Or didn't want to label themselves as joiners.
Right.
The subtle approach made it feel less threatening, less cultish.
But didn't this whole secrecy thing eventually backfires? I mean, people were bound to figure it out eventually.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where things get juicy.
Okay.
Enter Peter McWilliams,
right.
a former MSIA insider who ended up writing a scathing tell-all book exposing the movement's inner workings. The title itself says it all.
Okay.
Life 102. What to do when your guru sues you.
Okay, you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Sounds like a must-read.
It is a good one.
So this guy blew the lid off the whole operation.
He did.
Wow.
The book detailed how insight seminars in the University of Santa Monica were being used to funnel people into MSIA. It was a huge scandal.
Yeah.
And really highlighted the potential dangers of this Trojan horse approach.
It's fascinating to see how these groups adapted memetic strategies to their advantage.
It is.
SRF went for blending in, while MSIA opted for a more stealthy approach.
Right.
What other unexpected methods did these contagious cults use?
Well, our next example shows how even something as simple as a vegan restaurant can become a powerful tool for spreading beliefs.
Interesting.
Let's talk about God's direct contact.
Okay.
Or as it's more commonly known, the Kuan Yin method.
Kuan Yin meditation. I've actually heard of that one.
Yes.
Isn't it led by that charismatic female guru, Ching Hai?
That's right.
Okay.
And what Ching Hai has done brilliantly is create this global network of vegan restaurants called Loving Huts.
Okay.
At first glance, it just seems like a chain of restaurants promoting a healthy lifestyle. But it's so much more than that.
Wait, so you're telling me these restaurants are actually spreading her teachings?
They are.
How does that work? Do they slip messages into the fortune cookies?
It's much more subtle than that.
Oh.
Think of it this way. You walk into a Loving Hut because you're craving some delicious vegan food.
Right.
While you're enjoying your meal, you might notice posters or pamphlets about Kuan Yin meditation. Maybe there's a TV playing in the background showing one of Ching Hai's talks. It's all very subtle, but it's there.
So it's like a gentle introduction, almost subliminal.
Exactly.
By the time you finish your meal, you're already curious about Kuan Yin meditation.
And it's been incredibly effective.
Yeah.
These restaurants have popped up all over the world.
Wow.
Introducing Ching Hai's teachings to a massive and diverse audience.
It's a brilliant example of memetic distribution.
It is.
It makes me wonder if there are other seemingly harmless things in our daily lives that are actually spreading certain beliefs or ideologies.
Right.
It's a bit unsettling when you stop to think about it.
It really is. And Ching Hai doesn't just rely on subtle exposure.
Okay.
She also utilizes a very specific type of memetic incentive to encourage certain behaviors within her group.
Oh, this I have to hear. Yeah.
What kind of incentive are we talking about?
She's created an elaborate merit system where different actions are assigned a certain number of points.
Like a spiritual rewards program.
Precisely.
Interesting.
For example, meditating with Ching Hai herself earns you a whopping 300,000 points per hour.
Oh, wow.
But killing an animal, that'll cost you anywhere from 800,000 to a staggering 3 million points.
Wow. Talk about a high-stakes game.
Yeah.
It's definitely a powerful way to encourage specific behaviors and reinforce the group's values.
It taps into our innate desire for rewards.
Right.
And our aversion to punishment.
Right.
It's a clever way to gamify spiritual progress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about individual actions.
Yeah.
The entire community is structured around this point system.
Right.
Creating a powerful incentive to conform and contribute.
So from subtle exposure through vegan restaurants to a gamified system of rewards and punishments,
Yes.
Ching Hai has really utilized a multifaceted approach to spreading her teachings.
And it's a reminder that these contagious cults are often far more sophisticated than we give them credit for.
Absolutely.
They understand how to use memes, both subtle and overt,
Yes.
to achieve their goal.
And very successfully.
It makes you wonder what other memetic tricks these groups have up their sleeves.
It does.
We've seen piggybacking, the Trojan horse, and now this clever distribution strategy.
Right.
What else can we expect on this deep dive?
Okay, so we've seen groups blend in with existing beliefs, use hidden agendas, and even turn vegan restaurants into recruitment centers.
Right.
It's amazing how creative these contagious cults can be.
It is.
But what other strategies are out there?
Our next group demonstrates the surprising power of simplicity.
Oh.
Think about the catchiest jingles, the slogans you can't get out of your head.
Right.
Sometimes the simplest ideas are the most contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to ISKCon.
Okay.
Better known as the Hare Krishnas.
Oh, the Hare Krishnas. I've definitely encountered them before.
Chanting and handing out flowers in airports and city streets.
Right.
But how does that tie into meme theory?
It's all about the Hare Krishna chant itself.
Okay.
It's simple, repetitive, melodic.
Right.
The very definition of an earworm.
Yeah.
You hear it once, and it's stuck in your head for hours.
I have to admit, even I've found myself humming that chant at the most random times.
I know, right?
But isn't simplifying a message to the point of a chant a bit reductive?
Good question.
Doesn't it risk oversimplifying complex spiritual ideas?
That's a great question. And it's true that that chant itself doesn't convey the entire depth of Krishna consciousness.
Right.
But that's not really the point.
Okay.
The chant acts as a gateway, a meme that draws people in and sparks their curiosity.
So it's like a teaser trailer for a movie.
Yes.
You get a glimpse of what it's about,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to delve deeper to really understand the whole story.
Exactly.
And the Krishna's success with this strategy is undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
Their chant became a global phenomenon, even appearing in pop culture like George Harrison's hit song, My Sweet Lord.
A classic.
Wow, I didn't realize it had that kind of reach. But even with something as simple and catchy as a chant, there must have been challenges along the way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like many groups centered around a charismatic leader,
Right.
ISKCon faced internal conflicts and controversies after Swami Prabhupada's death.
Okay.
There were power struggles, accusations of abuse.
Wow.
It became a very different organization than it was in its early days.
It's a classic case of what can happen when the driving force behind a movement is gone.
Absolutely.
It shows how important succession planning is, even for spiritual organizations.
Definitely. And while those turbulent times tarnished the movement's image,
Right.
the Hare Krishna chant has endured.
Yeah.
It's a testament to its power as a meme that transcends cultural boundaries and continues to resonate with people around the world.
Fascinating. It's fascinating to see how a simple, repetitive chant can have such a lasting impact.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered piggybacking, the Trojan horse, strategic distribution, and now this concept of memetic simplicity.
Right.
What's our final stop on this tour of contagious cults?
Our last group takes us to a place where memetic strategies tap into something a bit darker.
Okay.
Our deepest fears and desires.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about Calvary Chapel,
Okay.
which rose to prominence during the Jesus People movement of the 1960s and 70s.
That was such an interesting time period.
It was.
A time of social upheaval, spiritual seeking,
Yes.
and a lot of anxiety about the future.
Absolutely.
It's no wonder new religious movements flourished during that era.
Exactly. And Calvary Chapel, under the leadership of Chuck Smith,
Okay.
really understood how to tap into the collective anxieties of the time. They offered a message of salvation and belonging,
Right.
but they also utilized some very powerful motivators.
What kind of motivators are we talking about?
Think fire and brimstone preaching,
Yeah.
vivid descriptions of heaven and hell, and a constant emphasis on the urgency of repentance.
Wow.
They didn't just present Christianity as a path to a better life.
Right.
They framed it as the only way to avoid eternal damnation.
Wow. That's a pretty intense approach. It's almost like those chain letters that threaten bad luck if you don't forward them to 10 people.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
They were essentially using fear as a memetic tool to spread their message and ensure compliance.
And it worked. Calvary Chapel grew rapidly.
It did.
Attracting people who were seeking certainty and stability
in
a world that felt increasingly chaotic.
I'm struck by how many of these groups used existing structures or beliefs.
Yeah.
Whether it's Christianity or veganism, to spread their message.
It seems like they're not necessarily creating something entirely new,
Right.
but rather adapting and repackaging familiar concepts.
That's a really insightful observation. And it speaks to the power of cultural context when it comes to meme propagation.
Yeah.
These groups understood that to be successful, they couldn't just present something completely foreign or radical.
Right.
They had to connect their ideas to something people already knew or believed in.
So they were essentially hijacking existing memes and repurposing them for their own agenda.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever and a little bit scary, if I'm being honest.
It is a bit unsettling when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of being aware of the memes that are shaping our own worldview.
Right.
We need to be critical thinkers, to question our assumptions, and to be wary of ideas that are presented as absolute truths, especially when they're packaged with strong emotional appeals.
It's a good reminder that we're all susceptible to these contagious ideas, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of cults and memes, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is that ideas are powerful. They spread like viruses, shaping our thoughts, our behaviors, and even our societies.
Yeah. By understanding the principles of memetics, we can become more aware of how these ideas operate. And make more conscious choices about what we allow to influence us.
It's like we need to develop a kind of mental immune system to protect ourselves from harmful memes.
Exactly. We need to be discerning consumers of information, to question our assumptions, and to be open to diverse perspectives.
It sounds like we've all got some homework to do.
We do.
And if you're interested in exploring this topic further, I highly recommend checking out Contagious Cults.
Absolutely a great book.
It's a fascinating read that'll make you think twice about the ideas you encounter every day.
It will.
Great advice. And on that note, remember, ideas are contagious. So choose wisely what you let infect your mind.
Yes.
Join us next time for another deep dive, where we'll be exploring